Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking the Flash episode Fury Road. And this was another really solid episode of the series. So let's just kind of get right into it. The subplot with Cisco and Harry, that was nicely done. I was a little tired. I got very quickly tired of Harry sort of trying to cover up the whole situation with him losing his intelligence. Um, but when Cisco finally kind of understood what was going on, it showed some really nice stuff between them. It's like, despite Harry being a jerk a lot of the time, the Team Flash really does care about him, and particularly Cisco. It's in this situation where he does have that connection to Harrison Wells as a friend and mentor, and this time it's not an evil speedster from the future who would totally murder him if it felt necessary. Yeah, Harry's a jerk, but he's not a bad person at heart. And I like how Cisco is able to, for a time, just completely mystify Harry, or to bring up Harry's own mystification as to why his daughter turned out the way that she did. And it's interesting to realize that Harry was in a lot of ways completely blind to the fact that for his flaws, of which he is aware, although perhaps more than a little indifferent at times, that he's actually a pretty good father. Sure, he's at times been overprotective, but given the kind of life that Jesse leads, it's a little hard not to blame him. But we have seen that Harry takes enormous pride in her, that she is the one thing in his life that he is more proud of than anything. And it's not just because she's incredibly intelligent, it's because Jesse is an extremely good and kind person. And Cisco points out, it's like, you know what? She wouldn't have been that person if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for having you as her father. And, I think it kind of clicks for Harry. It's like, you know what? Maybe I'm not, uh, not as much of a bad person as I thought. Maybe there is more humanity in me. And I kind of like how you mentioned, it's like, yeah, like, I wonder how long it's going to be before I lose my ability to read. And what's interesting is that reminds me of something that happened to, of all people, Mr. Terrific in the comics, where he did basically start losing his ability to, like, all the knowledge in his head. One of the issues in that storyline ended with him basically watching a children's video of how to having to start teaching himself again how to read. He literally had to learn everything he knew previously again, from basically the most basic skills. But he's Mr. Terrific, so of course he pulled it off, which was pretty darn amazing. Um, Also, like the situation with Caitlin and Killer Frost. It was Snart continuing his whole like therapist to superheroes thing, and I'm ultimately pointing out, like, yeah, Killer Frost was a personality that you shared a body with, but the two of you had formed a connection, that you cared about each other. You had, eventually started out in ways of, her being your evil side, and here it had become that Killer Frost was more or less a hero and a pretty decent person at the end of the day, someone who cared about her friends, who cared about Caitlin, and him telling her, it's okay to mourn this loss you suffered. And they do sort of set up the idea of, like, okay, well, maybe there's a way to bring Killer Frost back in the future. Then we don't need this dark matter situation. And well, you don't leave something like that just sitting on the table, now, do you? Um, Siren X was ultimately, in my mind, very disappointing. She basically has the exact same outfit as Black Siren, and apart from a few new powers, which were extremely interesting, there's really not that much about her that seems terribly special. So, I mean, it just really did kind of feel like a bit of a rehash of earlier season Black Siren. Also, it's sort of like, really, they go to Earth X, and they can't spare 5 minutes to help Snart take down Siren X and just sort of like, okay, let's knock her out, tie her up, and like call some of your friends to come and get her. Okay, now let's go to our Earth and deal with the situation. And what's really bugs me about that whole thing is that DeVoe later on is like, oh, yes, yes, I calculated all of this. It's like, okay, man, I will give you that maybe you calculated that they would go to Earth X and grab that version of Snart to help them out because, you know, hey, they're dealing with Borman, Cold would be effective against him. Who knows more about this than, you know, Leonard Snart? Except Caitlin, of course. And okay, fine, fine. I'll let you have that. You know, the Nazis were a crazy enough and public enough thing that you probably know about Earth X. Okay, I'll grant you that. But the whole thing, like, oh yeah, I totally anticipated that Black Siren would sneak over to our Earth and use her powers to overhear the conversation and be there to attack the... Bullshit. Okay, that's the limit, man. Okay, there I'm saying bullshit. I mean, this is a superhero show, and guys like the Thinker are supposed to be able to anticipate things on an absolutely crazy level, but even that has its limits. Especially when you hold it up to the idea that he could not think that the Thinker couldn't figure out that Barry would be really emotionally upset over Ralph's death and might lose the fight to Black Siren. I mean, granted, the whole thing with this episode is meant to be that the Thinker can't really understand emotions anymore, or understand emotions well, but still. And then afterwards, he himself is completely freaking out. His wife was like, well, maybe there's something you didn't think of. And he goes, no, of course I thought of everything. Like, well, you know, the proof that you didn't is staring you in the face and you're freaking out about it. So, yeah, I mean, again, this is meant to see also meant to show you that his own arrogance is one of the Thinker's incredibly big Achilles heels. Okay, fine, I get that. But still, you'd think that a little basic psychology would remain within his capabilities. So, I don't know. This is really kind of pushing things just a little too far, in my opinion. And, man, I don't know. I got a haircut recently, and I don't think it's really as even as it could be, which is weird because I went to a salon. It cost me like $50. And I'm completely off topic. Okay, well, it doesn't look that bad, does it? Yeah, I'm looking good. Okay. So, and just in case anyone's wondering, yes, I actually do own a mirror. So, let's see here. What else do we have to talk about? Nothing really particular to say about Fallout. Glad that they just didn't leave him just off in the wind. And then, you know, kind of picking up with what's going on with Tracy, or at least mentioning Tracy again. That was cool. I did think the whole thing with Black Siren deciding to attack the CCPD was a little bit weak. I mean, really? You have this thing, this basically a nuke, and you decide, well, I'm going to nuke the police? Really? Why not go and, like, nuke Washington, D.C. or something? I mean, you're a Nazi. Or, you know, why not go to, you know, one of the other towns, like nuke Star City, kill this Earth's Oliver? I don't know. It just sort of seemed like, oh, well, we killed their Earth's protectors. Maybe she wants to kill our Earth's protectors. It's like, that is so effing weak. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, granted, they don't have the Hall of Justice, so she can't go out and try and blow up the headquarters of the Justice League. But still, that seems really, really small potatoes. Well, I mean, okay, about as small potatoes as nuking a city can be. Excuse me. And, yeah, guys, I think that's really all I had for you this time around. So, as always, please comment, rate, subscribe. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at HoosierJedi, and please also join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer. Until next time, take care and have a good one.